Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. And today we actually have quite an interesting war in store for you. So this is going to be War 3 of Alliance War Season 24. ASR is going up against STARA, I believe it's a Russian alliance. And I got put on different paths, which don't happen too often. I was on path 2 in Section 1, which I personally believe is the scariest path in Section 1 because of all of those fury buffs opponents can gain and how quickly things can go sideways. And then path 7 in section 2, which is a lot to do with like power gains, height, aspect of evolution, and things like that. So that is also a quite tricky path. And I get to fight the final boss, which I am very pleased about. I typically get at least one boss fight per season. Hopefully this season I can get a couple more because my first one came in as early as it did. And yeah, definitely well excited to show you guys the war that I had. So let's just jump here and we're gonna start off with obviously the section 1 here. You can see that, well, quite significant amount of fights were already done by the time I joined the war. But it's all good. It's all good. It's not like I'm holding anybody up, especially now that there are no linked nodes. And yeah, so my first fight here is Symbiote Supreme. And it's actually very sneaky placement. So obviously I'm gonna put on my boosts. I don't want to be that guy who got KO'd because he didn't boost. Ultimately, what 95, 99% of the fights in Alliance War, boosting isn't really required. Right? I believe even today, let's say if I didn't boost for any of the fights that I had on my path, I probably would have been just fine. But it's just one of those things that can make the difference. And that's one of those things that make you go from maybe 3 deaths a season or 2 deaths a season to no deaths a season. And Symbiote Supreme here is a very, very sneaky placement. Actually, I think I need to swap about to a bit different setup here. So we're going to use this and yeah, so we can see the power bars a bit better. And Symbiote Supreme here is sneaky because I gain bar power only if he does. But I still need to keep on fighting. And if I don't throw a special attack every X amount of hits, he starts gaining those furies. So it's a very, very clever placement, actually. I liked it a lot. Dr. Doom here actually kind of works out pretty much perfectly because every time he gets past the bar of power slightly, I can use my level 1 to get him slightly below a bar of power. And I actually, for most part, had absolutely no problem controlling his power bar like that and controlling the aggression fury. But I didn't think it's going to be as easy, and I definitely expected this fight to be a lot more tricky. It's a very, very interesting ability combination here with Symbiote Supreme, with Power Struggle, with Strike Counter Fury. And on paper, this fight looked very scary. But Doctor Doom made it extremely, extremely straightforward and simple because of his ability to push him slightly below bar power, and yeah, that just worked out actually very great. We could see that he only had like 1 or 2 furies by the end of the fight. Obviously there is a little bit of a know-how when you are going up against these strike counter nodes. My preferred rotation with Dr. Doom is start with medium, then do the 3 lights, finish with a heavy attack, then do medium, light, medium, and then you should be at about a power, and you should have 1 hit on every single kind of like type of attack there. And that is kind of like how I try to start these fights, especially when I use Dr. Doom. So it's medium, triple light, heavy attack, medium, light, medium, and then whichever hit you throw, you're gonna be below. But here against Guillotine 2099, it's again the strike counter fury node, but I can gain power normally, so this fight is a lot less scary. As you can see, I'm gonna drop my level 2 here and the fight is over. It really wasn't all that hard, all that tricky. I should mention that opponent is running Bulwark global node, which I think is actually the second time this season we're going up against that, and ultimately is not a great defensive node because, well, number one, Dr. Doom is metal as well, and he just shreds through it like it doesn't exist, and it actually kind of helps him because that indestructible is an active buff. So when you nullify that or stagger it, you gain Mystic Dispersion. And then there are plenty of champions who just pretty much out ignore it. And even if a champion can't work around it, then you can just wait it out. And here we could see the exact same situation where I had one counter left on each different type of attack by doing the medium, light, 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 heavy attack, medium, light, medium, and well, then going for my special attack. And obviously this fight, Corvus against Dr. Doom, I would have to mess up quite badly here to lose this fight. And it would have to be like series of mistakes. I don't think any single mistake here would actually cause me to die. Maybe if I run at his level 2 or something. But yeah, so here I'm gonna go for a level 3 of my own. I actually, if I remember correctly, think that this isn't gonna do any damage. Oh no, it does some damage, just didn't do much of a damage because of that armor buff. Either way, the fight is pretty much over here. Very dominant performance from Dr. Doom here thus far, and we can see that the middle fights here are clear, and this is it for my personal contribution in section 1. Now, all of these next fights in section 2, I did quite early in the morning, and I did them before my officer had woken up. And I looked at the nodes, Spite, powerful from afar, it's Mr. Sinister, and I was thinking, who should I use here? Who was I meant to use here? But the person who assigned these fights to me with the team that I had in didn't actually kind of like specify, and I suspected that this is what he wanted me to use Warlock on against Domino and this Mr. Sinister. But I saw absolutely no reason why can't I just Quake the guy. If I don't trigger Spite, if I don't make any big mistakes, he will not trigger Powerful from afar. And I'm gonna be good here. Absolutely no problem. Why not Quake this, right? You can see that if you hold Concussion up, so if you're holding Heavy Attack whilst he dashes back, he does not gain that power gain buff. And on top of that, if you do not Dex, you do not trigger a buff, he doesn't trigger Spite. Now there is a way how you can get a buff on you with Quake and not trigger Spite, and it's even not even that tricky. But again, my Alliance War philosophy always is better safe than sorry, keep it simple, keep it consistent. So I know I could have gotten that Dex buff on me and spent the entire fight Dexing perfectly and be just fine. But again, I just decided to keep it simple, and it worked out. Here you can see that I did take quite a lot of block damage. That's on me. I definitely missed my fair share of parries. But the fight's over, and there was no critical moments at all whatsoever. And I can happily move on to the next fight. The next fight is Domino. And Domino is always a bit scary champion to go up against, right? Except, well, at least for me, except when I'm using Quake. There is no other champion in this game with whom I feel as confident going up against Domino as I do with Quake. So we're going to check out the nodes. So it's Aspect of Evolution, Kinetic Transference, and why not? So I basically just don't want to parry in this fight. So I want to dex up everything. And Domino is actually relatively easy to Quake. The key thing when starting a fight against Domino is to start the fight already charging heavy attack. It's kind of like a duel of Domino's 15% ability accuracy reduction versus Quake's 100. If you start the fight charging the heavy attack, it lowers Domino's ability accuracy, and that 15% ability accuracy reduction that Domino has does not trigger, so you never get crit failed. And past that, it's pretty much a regular Quake fight, where you just need to keep in mind that double medium attack she has, And whenever you see that, you kind of need a slightly longer pause after it, otherwise you're gonna get caught. And that's it. You just need to delay whichever action you were gonna take next after that first medium attack. And the rest of her attacks are very basic, very simple, very telegraphed, and there isn't much issue in there. You can see that she is about to die with absolutely no power, never having crossed a bar of power, and therefore neither of the nodes on her made any difference at all whatsoever in this fight. And again, I later double checked with my officer. I was kind of meant to use Warlock for both of these fights, but he wasn't around, and even if he was, I probably would have ended up using Quake just because I feel very, very comfortable using this champion. The next up is going to be Thing, and this is again kinetic transference and powerful from afar, and whatever else he has, and whatever else he has is something that I don't care about. Now there I did make a slight mistake. I did let him get a bit of power at the start, but once I am in the corner using Quake, again, it's very straightforward. Just need to make sure I'm always holding heavy attack whenever he's dashing back, and if the heavy attack is being held, he will never trigger that power gain buff. And yeah, so here we can see that Quake does whatever Quake does. I do have relatively substantial amount of boosts active here. Again, you guys by now probably know my personal approach and idea about boosting in wars. And yeah, 50 seconds in the fight, that Thing is already halfway down, so he's melting quite quickly here. Absolutely nothing to stress about. And he isn't gaining any power. I'm not worried about kinetic transference because I'm fully awaiting any and all attacks that guy is throwing. And very, very safe Quake fight. Truth be told, removal of Stubborn has like reopened Quake's full potential in Alliance War. Because even as limiting as Stubborn was, Quake was still one of the best champions and one of the most used champions in Alliance War. Now that Stubborn is gone, the opportunities for Quake fights that are close to endless, and I think until they come up with another defensive tactic that significantly hinders Quake, Alliance War will once again be dominated by Quake. Now, for me, on a personal level, obviously it makes things a lot easier because I'm very comfortable quaking. Ultimately, for you guys and to a degree for me as well, it does make Alliance War more boring, and I recognize that. Ultimately, I feel that Alliance War has dipped down currently in the term of difficulty. I do think that Alliance War is easier right now than it pretty much has been in a really, really long time. And Quake being out there on Rampage is quite big part of that. But next up, we have this vigorous assault recovery mini boss man thing, and I wasn't assigned this fight, but I took it because somebody stole my mini boss last war. Don't know who it was, didn't check, was not happy. I'm getting my mini boss back. And obviously, it's not the greatest idea to always do, but it's a bad habit of mine, I suppose. I do like to get more fights in Alliance War, and sometimes I just take them. And as long as you don't die, nobody's really on my case about it, right? And yeah, so easy matchup for Quake here. I have done it a bunch of times and not too much to stress about. And at this point, the outcome of the war was pretty much clear. And yeah, it took away a lot of pressure and got us kind of like joking about as a team. Perhaps not playing to our best, but still good enough to win. But for me, on a personal level, though, I'm still trying to keep my deathless streak going. And because of that, obviously, I do have a boss fight assigned this war. That means for me, things weren't quite over. I didn't die last season. Season before that, I had one death, and obviously this season I want to carry on going deathless. But seems my alliance officers are putting me in the deep end at times. And this war definitely was one of those where I thought I got put on maybe on a bit harder path, which I like, which I don't mind at all, and I also got assigned boss fight. But the boss here is Hulkbuster, and I specifically didn't want to mention this fight before, and all the respect to our opponents in STARA. They put up a good war, they cleared our map, did quite well. But this is the one of the worst boss placements I have seen within the last half a dozen seasons, maybe a dozen seasons, because it's quite pointless. We do know for a fact that Doctor Doom is like the most used Alliance war attacker. Quite literally, he was the most popular Alliance war offensive champion. And you're going up against Hulkbuster and Bulwark node. So Doctor Doom is immune to armor break, which actually is a bit annoying. I'd prefer if I had an armor break on, but he's also immune to shock. He's a mystic champion with very powerful nullification capabilities and gets his mystic dispersion consistently fed either by those adaptive nodes when he builds up physical and energy resistance or by Hulkbuster's armor up. Also, every single time Hulkbuster throws a special attack, if I want him to, because I could easily play in a way where he doesn't, he triggers an unblockable buff that does expire and trigger Mystic Dispersion once again. So I gain a ton of power. I have virtually no obstacles in this fight. You can see that it's a pure beatdown. This is a fight that is basically as straightforward for a Doom fight as it gets. And again, it's just not a good boss placement. Even if the Hulkbuster was duped, okay, he would get regen, but Doom would nullify it. And we can see here that, 2 minutes have expired, he's at already 30% health and melting away. I have more than enough time to take all the hits in the block if I choose to, because Hulkbuster doesn't hit that hard outside of me having a ton of shocks, which can't happen. And yeah, very, very easy, straightforward, comfortable boss kill here, and it's just not a good placement. It is a boss solo, but I'm not particularly proud of it because it really was very, very straightforward and easy one. And thanks, I guess, but just so anybody that watches this, yeah, it's not a great placement for a boss. Please don't do that with Bulwark or any other global. Doctor Doom's just gonna go and brutalize the guy. But that is it for my war. Quite an eventful war. Boss fight, some mini boss action, very tricky path. So I personally enjoyed it. So needless to say, ASR won this war. So currently we are 2-1 in the season. We have won 2, lost 1 against Kenobi, which obviously stings a bit so early on. But hopefully we can have a great remaining season and we can still make our way in top 3. That being said, I hope you guys have enjoyed today's video. If you have, hit that like button, hit that sub button, hit all the buttons. And I will, as always, catch you guys soon. See ya. Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about